Imagine a world where shopping is not just a transaction, but a reflection of the times we live in. Picture the baby boomers who fondly recall the joy of browsing through store aisles, valuing the tactile experience of quality products. We move forward in time. We meet Gen X, who navigate the hybrid shopping approach, valuing recommendations from family and friends. Then we flow into the era of the millennials, the pioneers of e-commerce who also set new standards for shoppings based on their values. Next, we encounter Gen Z, the true digital natives who are buying from their phones and seek customized experiences. And let's not forget Gen Alpha, the little ones growing up with technology at their fingertips. Their shopping experiences will be shaped by seamless digital integrations influenced by the trends set by their predecessors. No matter their age, customers want the best value for their money, whether it's free shipping or loyalty rewarded deals. When we break shoppers down into their generations, we see priorities shuffling by age. Today, we are here to take you on a shopping spree. Hello, everyone. I am Goldie, your host for today.
And I'm Lakshan, your co host. And this is episode 15 of Mind the Gen Gap podcast.
Firstly, I want to share a little bit about my own love for shopping, a passion that goes way back to my childhood. I can vividly remember the excitement of hunting for that perfect deal, lining up outside my favorite clothing stores on the first day of sales, as if the entire store would disappear if I didn't dash in on time. Like many of us, I've fallen for the tricks of psychological pricing and occasionally found myself overspending, only to later realize I'd missed out on a great bargain just because I let overthinking take the reins. There is something that does not quite require any overthinking, though. The three R's: rate, review, and reshare our podcast, fellow listeners. It is so very simple when you do this. We get to see your loyalty, and this matters so much to us. As a proud member of Gen X, I've come to understand that my ideal shopping experience doesn't take place in a bustling mall. Instead, I much prefer exploring quaint street shops. I enjoy a little online browsing from time to time, but I usually do my homework before making any final retail decisions. Whilst I personally get happy at the idea of shopping, I definitely recognize for some people it can be something banal or for some even borderline stressful. But what we will explore today in part one is how those decisions are made and what influences the different generations to engage in a retail experience. Later in part two, I want to touch upon a more worrying aspect of shopping that is actually affecting our younger cohorts. This is called doom spending. So now my first question, Lakshan, are you a shopper?
Not exactly. Maybe not until recently. I think recently, maybe a few months back or so, I've been making a little more effort into how I show up and present myself in terms of my dressing. It's very simple and plain right now. I try to keep it that way. So if I shop at all, it would be online for clothes. That's about it.
So I hear the online shopper definitely emerges. And of course, you are a true zillennial, as we know you. So this is definitely synonymous to the trends of what zillennials do in their shopping habits. Okay. And what do you notice at home with your dad and mum? How do they shop?
My dad doesn't really shop. The people who know him well are the ones who go out and gift him clothes. My mom she has to step out of the house and go to a store and pick up something and wear it and try it on and see if it fits. If she likes it. If she doesn't like it, we go to the next store and then the next and then the next until she finds something she likes. My brother, very similar to me. Everything's online, Amazon, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's interesting because it brings me on to covering part one, what drives each generation to shop. We've heard your story from home, and obviously, consumer behavior definitely varies significantly between generations, particularly between millennials and baby boomers. So each generation has distinct preferences influenced by their upbringing and probably by their life experiences. The most important factors that come into play are obviously economic prosperity, social change, and of course, the impact of technology. But before I actively dive into this topic, I personally parted from some, preconceived notions myself. I did believe that younger generations are keen to spend their money online, and the older cohorts stay loyal to their few in-person stores and value in-store service and attention. Whilst this is partly true, there is a nuanced story behind the reality of what makes each person want to shop, irrespective of their age. Can you take a guess what this factor is, Lakshan?
So I do know that people say that we buy based on our emotions and justify it with logic. I presume it's got something to do with that.
It does. It does. It's definitely about being informed well. So where is your information coming from? Whether it's a baby boomer, who wants a store manager to educate them on their options and take that informed decision, or it's a Gen Alpha who's keenly following their favorite TikTok influencer who convinces them somehow that they actually need retinol based creams at the age of 11. Who knows? In one way or another, the power of information and influence has always stood strong. Okay. So you were not far from thinking that. The main differences, however, lie in the modality of reaching each generation. A retail report carried out by Lightspeed only last month in October noted that older cohorts aged 55 plus prefer to get their communication from retailers online. That's 52%. And only 2% use social media platforms like TikTok or Instagram for product info. However, Gen Z and millennials prioritize social media and viral content over traditional sources. Their preferences include TikTok at 37% and then Instagram at 32%. So you can see the vast contrast, yeah, between boomers and millennials and Gen Z. Now, another interesting point is referral from friends and family. This is equal for baby boomers, and Gen X and elder millennials also averaged at 35%. But Gen Z and millennials go straight to the source, whether it's the website or, as I mentioned, social media. Okay, so the power of people influencing you is far higher for Gen X and older millennials, and of course, baby boomers, than the younger cohorts. Um, we also saw in the report that Gen X also use Facebook and Instagram and not so much TikTok. So what I'm picturing here and picking up is this contrast of retail decision making based on seeking information from people versus online mediums. Lakshan, if you remember in last week's episode, you said that a close to 50% of Gen Z workers prefer getting guidance from AI tools rather than traditional managerial advice. This is because of their growing comfort with using AI and the growing trust in technology. I'm noticing a very similar pattern in their preferences for shopping. Gen X seems to be a blend of both, wanting to explore both avenues before spending their money. That's where I wanted to ask you, are you seeing a pattern here as well with the idea of technology becoming far more important for, Gen Z especially, even when it comes to shopping?
Very much so, Goldie, because as I was listening to you you speak about all this, I was thinking about my own patterns of my own buying behavior, basically. And as you said, we go straight to the source, right? And that's exactly what I do. If I want to buy, right now I'm browsing laptops and stuff. I want to invest in a fancy laptop, high end, well performing laptop next year, and I'm doing the research now itself. And everywhere I start, wherever I look at doing research, it is on social media, it's on YouTube. What do certain content creators say? Certain um, very well reputed and trusted influencers say. A lot more of that. And then, of course, apart from them just telling you what to do, they also tell you what to look for. So I also look for certain specifications on the website or on wherever it is I choose to plan to purchase the item from. Do my due diligence, and then I take the call and I purchase it online. I don't even consider going uh, to a physical store, because I don't know if that particular unit of whatever I want is going to be there.
Hmm.
So to me, it's just easier. I have all the information. I feel like I'm making the right decision. I pull the plug and do it online. So that's the way I go about doing it. And with respect to uh, you know my mom, it's always, she tells us also, don't buy everything online. You never know what you get. It may be defective. She has her own biases and preconceived notions. Let's say she has to go outside and get certain things, especially if it's something more expensive. If it's something cheaper, she's perfectly happy doing it online. But if it's something more expensive, or if she looks at it as an investment, she has to go out in person. And you said the tactile experience, no? Touch and feel. She has to do that. It's very important for her to do that. My dad, I would say, is someone who's a mix of both. He understands
Yeah.
the value of doing that thing, but I think he also understands the convenience of the online experience.
Hmm.
So he's a mix of both, I would say. That's how I notice the difference in generations, because
Yeah.
I see it at home, right? Yeah.
And actually, your entire story and, personal family experience is resonating so much with me, which is why I'm going to, share a story of my own. And that's going to kind of justify the data that is backed up by the report that I earlier shared statistics from. I'm going to give you a real example. As I said, picture this. I can envision my own mother. She is going to be 70 next year. She's articulating a request along the lines of, will you take me shopping, Goldie? I need to find a suitable pair of shoes that provide adequate support for my feet, whilst also being formal enough for a dinner engagement. I would prefer to avoid sneakers or heels. Ideally, I'm looking for black shoes accented with gold and silver detailing to ensure compatibility with all my outfits. I intend to wear them to Indian weddings as well as Western functions. As you were hearing this, I was looking at your face, Lakshan. I think you agree her specifications are more precise than a medical formula, correct? And this is a baby boomer who has always taken pride in going out on her own and finding exactly the item that she requires. Now she has turned to her daughter, who thinks, who may assist her with a little bit of a better gauge. Now, the Gen X in me would promptly initiate an online search. I would reach out to my friends with similarly aged parents. Subsequently, I would be compiling a list of stores we could visit in person, her and I. Conversely, my daughter, who's a Gen Z, would likely conduct her research on TikTok, and she would conclude that there are no suitable options available for Nani, for her grandmother. This observation clearly highlights that women of my mother's generation do not use TikTok. Therefore, they will have nothing to see there. I also see my daughter being repelled, literally repelled at the idea of asking around. She thinks navigating the World Wide Web is much better for her. So, do you see the observations I'm trying to pinpoint and highlight here, Lakshan?
Yeah, yeah, very much so. I mean, I don't know how I would go about looking at TikTok to find something as specific as that. I would do something quite similar to what you did, which is the online search. But I'm not too certain I would reach out to friends and go about doing that. To me, it's like, no, 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 I can find it on the internet. I'm sure it's there. All the filters and all the specifications, and dump all the data there, something will come out. But would I reach out to friends only as a last resort, not otherwise?
Exactly. And this is precisely kind of the summary of what part one was, correct? Who goes to online, who does like a hybrid, and those who just entirely depend on going, into stores and wanting to find the shoes, in this case, of their choice. Mum would still definitely depend on those few stores, but she would come to me because she knows I'm out there a little bit more. And she also knows my affinity with the online searching, which is a little bit more technical than maybe her ability to check something, say, on Facebook, which she would definitely also try doing, probably failing and finding that pair of shoes that she's, seeking to get. Okay, so we've now move on to part two. It's called doom spending. This is what I want to talk about. I mentioned earlier that, our habits in shopping are shaped in a very, very large way by the socioeconomic climate that we live in. So it would be obvious then to imagine that if we have less disposable income, we can afford lesser things. That would be the logical thing to probably assume. However, this argument has been overturned by a phenomenon called doom spending. It refers to that impulsive shopping spree where individuals splurge on luxuries like travel and designer clothing as a way to cope with their anxiety about the economy and their future. A recent survey revealed some staggering numbers. 96% of Americans, in this case, express a concern over the state of the economy. Well, that's no news, new news to us. And more than a quarter of them admit that they're spending excessively just to manage these stress levels about their concern for the economy. And this concern is not just affecting in the US, but it actually transcends across borders, like countries such as Colombia, which is in South America. It's particularly worrying because it's affecting the lives of Gen Z and millennials because it's seen as a coping mechanism they are using to face mental health issues. So it's obtaining that much needed dopamine hit, which is, as we know, the hormone that releases as a reward in your body. It's a distraction and it's a sense of self control that you get in overwhelming times by wanting to spend on something. Now, sadly, as we know, this is a short lived, effect and actually comes with more detrimental consequences, like higher levels of debt being the most obvious one. Lakshan, as I was reading about this data, it reminded me of that classic scenario where we avoid meeting our deadlines because we don't want to face the difficulties or rather the emotions that come with it, such as boredom or the classic fear of failure. And so many of us, we battle with this term, an idea called procrastination, right? We replace meeting that deadline with like those short bursts of dopamine hits, like playing a video game or going to grab a snack or having a phone call with a friend. Yeah. What are you thinking of all this as I'm telling you, Lakshan? The idea of doom spending.
So a couple of things come to my mind, Goldie. Very first one is with respect to what you said about Gen Z and millennials, the way they go about doom spending as a way to cope, right?
Mm.
There's a friend of mine who is into e-commerce, and he's someone who, of course, to make sure that he's running a business successfully, has to make sure that he has all the data, all the analytics. He's able to make sure that his website is well and running, the copy, the marketing piece, content, all of it, right? And he's someone who tries to study trends and analytics and all this stuff, and create ads in such a way that they perform as well as they can on, say, a TikTok or an Instagram, primarily TikTok, in order to get sales for a product he's selling, right? Now, he is someone who sells products that are, say, for um, the elder millennials or Gen X type of crowd, because it is people who are fairly well settled in their lives, have a family to take care of, and so on and so forth. But I can see how the same thing could be happening where the targeting is towards Gen Z, and when they find something of interest, immediately they just swipe the credit card, so to say, and they make that purchase, right? And the second thing I want to say is recently there was a report that came out in India. I want to say maybe 2 3 weeks back or so, where they spoke about the market share that some of the major mobile phone operators have in the country. Operate as in like your manufacturing brands, right? And as of this year, iPhone in India has about 8% of market share, and it overtook OnePlus, which has about 6%. And OnePlus is, for those people who are listening in India, it's one of the more well-known brands when it comes to getting high quality mobile phones at a comparatively reasonable price in comparison to, say, your Apple and your Samsung, right? And of course, Samsung was at 12% or whatever, and 8% was iPhone. And a few days later, I saw this video of these tech influencers talking about how Gen Z is obsessed with iPhones in India, and they are taking out loans uh, to go ahead and purchase that phone just to be able to show people, hey, I have an iPhone.
Mm.
So this thing about mental health that you spoke about, apart from it being it's a apart from it being like a mental health thing, it's also like this social
Yeah.
thing, not to show, hey, my things may not be going as well as I would like them to go in my life and how I'm handling my stress, but at least I have an iPhone I can show off to my friends. And
Mm.
that is a trend that I'm observing right now here, Goldie, and that's what I'm making out of everything you shared so far.
Absolutely. It's a bit like, it's a bit like that girl who has to have avocado toast and hazelnut latte for her breakfast and take a picture of it and show it on her socials because it's the breakfast that her generation are consuming. But we know the value and the cost that comes with spending on that breakfast is absolutely exorbitant, and she probably can't even afford it. However, it definitely is a very close measure of her social standing to prove that I can afford to have this type of breakfast. But I don't want to blame the generations just because they have less disposable income and they therefore are falling into the traps because the economy is not in their favor. So, you know, traditionally, we've all been through what we call retail therapy. In my days, it wasn't called doom spending. It was called, oh, I feel low. I'm just going to go out and shop a little bit, or I'll feel better if I go shopping. Especially the girls, we spoke like this, and we still do. A little bit of retail therapy will help me get into a better mood. However, what's happened is that the access to buying has increased so much, so easily. It's so readily available to get these things just at the click of a tap of a finger on your phone, that it's more tempting, and it's just easier to fall into that trap. And let's not forget the algorithms that are not contributing to this either. They're only accentuating the idea of you needing to buy something because they think you need it. It's not that you want it, you think you need it, right? And so this need versus want argument is also pretty important to mention. I think we never really need something, but we think we do, and that's again your brain telling you, because the algorithms are feeding you that information. So I think it's a good point to come to some conclusions. We've left our audiences, with some interesting things to think about. This episode definitely was, a contrast it in addressing the fun shopping trends that, glue all the generations together, to a more concerning trend that is affecting our younger Gen Z, and, perhaps maybe extending to Alpha as well. Although I do want to say that it's interesting to see whether this also does affect the Gen X or the older millennials, because you are all using devices and social media. So watch out to see what is being fed to you on your, on the algorithms. Helping obviously the younger generations to have a healthier relationship with money would be the first start. And as I said, making them see how algorithms are playing a big role in influencing their retail decisions would be a second step, especially when they are feeling low. Stay away from your phones, perhaps that would be a good idea, and engage in hobbies that can give you the same hit of dopamine versus maybe spending on that lipstick or whatever else you want to indulge in. Um, I want to thank our listeners, for remaining faithful to our podcast and for helping us to create the content that we do. This particular episode was actually inspired by my good friend Nena, who actually sent me an article about this topic, shopping trends with Gen Z, and it really got me thinking, because I think it's our responsibility as the podcasters of Mind the Gen Gap to bring awareness on all topics related to the generations that surround us. Obviously, we as the older generations need to take that responsibility, because we are here to inform the younger ones. And if, even though we called it retail therapy and they call it doom spending, but the traps that they're more likely to fall into are much, much higher. We leave you, as I said, with that food for thought. And with that, we've come to the end of episode 13 of Mind the Gen Gap podcast. I've been your host, Goldie.
And I've been your co host, Lakshan. Thank you so much for listening, watching, and tuning in all the way to the very end.
Muchísimas gracias.
See you in the next one.
Hasta pronto.
Bye.